strategy against the United States was focused on undermining domestic confidence in the U.S. president. They wanted to just make you sound like your president wasn't so hot, when actually your president has done a great job, and they did everything possible to do exactly that.
I'd swallow. Okay, that groggy sound is Donald J. Trump talking last night about the explosive intelligence. Of course, the Chinese, it's always the Chinese because everybody's a communist now. The Chinese strategy, you guys, was to convince you, American people who love Donald J. Trump, not to love Donald J. Trump, that he did a bad job as the president in 2019 during, or 2020 during the COVID crisis, where a million Americans died, or their body bags are stocking up in the streets, where he told us to inject bleach or put a light up our ass. Somehow we were all fooled by the Chinese to think he wasn't doing a great job. Right? I mean, that's clearly the strategy. I mean, I don't know how we missed it this whole time, but that was what it was. Look, this speech that we were told was going to be a huge deal, it ended up being the classic Trump thing, right? Not a huge deal. It ended up being just the usual. It was just the usual stuff he always talks about, which is nothing, right? A lot of what I'm going to call, you'll hear a lot during this show, spaghetti against the wall, and that's why I want to talk to you guys about this. I got a great guest talking about that. Here's some more from that speech, and this one's pretty bizarre too. Okay, so I'm going to show you why. Now watch what he says about China. China stole our voter data.
Starting during the 2020 election cycle, the People's Republic of China carried out what is believed to be the largest compromise of election data in history, resulting in China's illicit acquisition of 220 million U.S. voter files. That information includes names, addresses, phone numbers, political party preferences, and other sensitive data that would be needed to register to vote and engage in other nefarious activities, which is exactly what was happening. This data loss presents an unprecedented election security nightmare. The intelligence even shows that China assigned a data exploitation unit specifically to this new project. Compounding the travesty, the second set of documents we are releasing reveals that members of the deep state, very, very famous group of people, many cases, in our intelligence agency work to actively suppress and downplay information about the extent of China's sinister election meddling, covering it up from both the president and the American people like nobody thought was possible.
So now China's the bad guy. The funny thing is, I won't get into the details of it, but if you watch the stuff they did release shows that Russia did actively meddle. Russia did plant the Burisma story about Hunter Biden. Russia did plant efforts to undermine Vice President Biden's efforts to become the president. He literally proved what we've been saying all along, is Russia all along. As far as China taking your voter information, the fact is most of that stuff is available. It's available publicly. You can buy it and download it. You know why I know? Here's the sinister plot that's going on, folks. This app on my phone, I won't let you see the details, is called Minivan. It's from a company called NGP. That's how people knock on your door. The voter data is public. They buy it or get it publicly. It tells you maybe what your voter registration is, maybe whatever data they can gather, including maybe your age, your party affiliation. And I can walk up to your door and knock on your door. And that's the reason a Democratic candidate knocked on your door when you're a registered Democrat, is because this is public information. Nothing in that little minute and a half of him droning on proves anything happened. For all we know, China used that data to target you with Temu ads. Okay? That's why nobody reported it, because no one could prove anything malicious happened. Just having your data. Look, everybody has your data, folks. You know that. Facebook's got more data than China, probably. Meta's got more data than most of these people have. Doesn't mean they're doing something about our elections. That's how they're doing it. They throw the spaghetti in the wall and they try to make you think you're crazy. That, oh my God, this sounds so nefarious. China has my information. No shit, China has your information. So does Amazon. So does Elon Musk. My God, Elon Musk and Doge literally downloaded the Social Security database on external drives and took it. And we don't know where it is. But that's not being investigated. No, what we're investigating is that China had it back in 2020 when your favorite president lost his election. The whole thing is so freaking ridiculous. I don't even know where to start. But let's start with this because this is where it matters. This is the kind of stuff they're putting. Here's a spokesman for the White House just today.
I saw a tweet yesterday from Olive Garden, of all places, that in order to take advantage of their never-ending pasta pass, you have to show voter ID. And I thought, that's weird. Olive Garden takes pasta pass security more seriously than Democrats are taking election security. So yes, President Trump is going to keep pushing this, and it just shows how absurd the Democrats are that they can't even get behind common sense policies that even, somewhere like Olive Garden can say, hey, we need this for us too. Yeah, wow. So
Wow. Olive Garden deserves ID. Wow. You see, this is the gaslighting. I'm getting beat up on Twitter today because I said, voting as a constitutional right. Olive Garden and Costco are private companies. The point is, the voter ID is not the issue in the SAVE Act. Look, this is what they're trying to fool you, folks. Oh, it's all about vote. Democrats are stopping the most common sense thing. The SAVE Act is about voter ID. Folks, the SAVE Act is not about voter ID. This is what the SAVE. This is from the White House. All voters must show voter ID. Look, you have to show ID when you register to vote. And you have to sign an affidavit saying that I'm a U.S. citizen, or it's perjury it's a felony. Okay, that's but here's what the rest of it is. You must show proof of citizenship. No mail-in ballots at all, except for illness, disability, military travel. That's in the SAVE Act. And then the last four, for some reason, never comes up. Number 4, no men and women's sports, no transgender surgeries for our children. That has nothing to do with voting. Okay? They want you to pass these bills because they think it's about voter ID. It's the ultimate gaslighting. And that's all that last night was, okay? Last night was nothing but gaslighting. Gaslighting 101 again and again and again. The danger is what happens next. And that's why I've got the perfect guest, as always. I've got the folks from Fair Fight. Fair Fight, they've been fighting this stuff for a long time, and they're in the fight. They reached out to kind of give us some perspective on last night's speech from Donald Trump, what it means and what's next. So I'm really excited to talk about that. It's such an important time. Voting is occurring right here in Missouri. Literally, our early voting is occurring right now. We wouldn't even do a lot of the early voting we have legally in a red state if the SAVE Act goes through and Donald Trump gets his way. That's how serious this is. So when they tell you it's about voter ID, they're full of shit. It's much more than that. We already have voter ID in most states when you sign up to register. So let's get on with the show. I'm so excited. I'm Fred Wellman. This is On Democracy with FB Wellman. We're here every Friday night at 7 p.m. Eastern, right here in the My Touch area. If you haven't liked and subscribed or checked or shared with your friends or posted your social media, you need to do it now because we're going to have a great conversation. And let's get on with the show. Oh, yeah. Welcome. I am Fred Wellman. I was Fred Wellman 30 seconds ago. This is On Democracy with FB Wellman. Throat's a little scratchy. I know that's going to sound like Alex Jones all show, but I apologize for that. If I turn pink, I'm having an Alex Jones moment. But hey, welcome back. It's great to be here Friday night with you in the Minus Mighty. Look, you saw the clips, you saw the feedback, just unhinged as always. The White House said they're so excited. Donald Trump stood in the East Room and the press secretary said, it's going to shock us. Declassified documents that claim China compromised the data. 220 million voters. A Venezuelan plot to rig the voting machines. Non-citizens, although just chaos factors. Look, he didn't declare the national emergency lobbyists were bracing for. Steve Bannon kind of thought he did. But the thing is, it was just another chaos night from Donald Trump. Our friends at Fair Fight have been gearing up for this, right? Fair Fight Action, they're fighting for fair elections, free elections, democracy to work the way it's supposed to. We're supposed to have access. So we're really thrilled. And we're working on this week. We knew when he announced this speech, it was going to be unhinged. Donald Trump never disappoints in being unhinged for us, and we plan on him being unhinged. But my guest and I spent months tracking exactly how he got to this stage, and he's here to walk us through exactly what was in those documents, supposedly the shocking documents, versus what President Trump claimed them to be. So I want you to welcome Amir Badat. He's the Southern States Director and Senior Advisor for Fair Fight. Glad to have you on the show, Amir. Come on board.
Hey, Fred.
There you are. Hey, good to see you, man. Wow, welcome.
How's it going?
Wow. Did you get any sleep? Last night?
You know what? I actually slept really well because what we saw last night was a desperate man who is really pulling at strings, pulling at straws to try to advance his narrative. And so I slept pretty well last night. I didn't have any concerns or worries from what came out last night.
Well, I think you guys were ready. I mean, I was looking at the prep documents. You guys put out press release ahead of time talking about what to expect. In a lot of ways, it's what we expected. I mean, the usual stuff. The first 10, 15 minutes wasn't even about the issue you're supposed to talk about. I guess we could start the newly declassified documents that China can't, the largest compromise of election data in history, 220 million voter records. Uh, what does that actually tell us? I mean, which of that is true? What's that smoke and mirrors? Which do we know already? I don't even know where to start.
Yeah, I think that there are a few important points here. Number one, most of the information that he talked about last night and that are part of these declassified documents, supposedly new declassified documents, this is not actually new information.
No.
This is information that has been out there, that has been reviewed by intelligence agencies, that has been repeatedly determined to be really nothing. And so we're not really hearing anything new coming out of the speech last night, which is part of why I was able to sleep so well. Is that, this is just rehashing the same old conspiracy theories that we've heard for so long from Donald Trump. And then the other thing about these hundreds of thousands of declassified documents is that this is all just raw intelligence. And the reason why we have intelligence agencies, the reason why we have intelligence experts that are trained to review, to analyze, to determine whether something is important versus not important, material to our national security versus not material to our national security, is because you can't just rely on raw intelligence that comes in.
Right.
So some of these things are just tips from anonymous individuals. There's just, you can't really make any determinations based on just hundreds of thousands of raw intelligence documents. And then going back to what I was saying earlier, this intelligence has been already reviewed by intelligence personnel and determined to not be evidence of Chinese attempts to interfere or manipulate our election results. And I think that's the most important part here, is that nothing, none of this is new, and you can't make determinations just from raw intelligence information.
Right. It feels like spaghetti being thrown against the wall again and again and again. And now it's recycled spaghetti, isn't it? It's the same. I mean, again, I think several states pointed out that anyone can download voter data. And that's what shocked me the most, is the big hit is the Chinese got our data. But he doesn't ever say what they did with it or what the point. I mean, it's open source information. It's just one more thing that people, I would argue, isn't it easy to argue that actually any data company in America that vacuums up data probably has the exact same information, don't they?
Absolutely. And this is all, the hundreds of thousands of voter file data information that he was talking about, the personal information, individualized information about registration and addresses and things like that. Most of that information is publicly available. You can go online right now to most
Right.
Secretary of State website and download that information. You can download the voter file or buy the voter file, and you will have that data. And we've known that the Chinese government has been buying that data to make determinations about all sorts of different things. And so,
Right.
again, it's not new information.
Right. I mean, this is going to shock you, but if you've ever run for office or helped a campaign, you know what you have on your phone? Voter information that you downloaded. And it's called
Right.
NGP, right? I mean, literally, that's when people knock on your door to ask you why you're voting, if you're going to vote for the Democrat, it's because they had your voter roll information. I mean, it is none of this is,
Exactly.
malfeasant or malicious. It's just the facts. And it feels like just throwing out, the other piece of this thing was, of course, the usual Venezuela CIA memo about, rigging votes undetectably, but they didn't even say they could pull it off in Venezuela. I mean, and it isn't even most, how badly does the gap in this document, and this speech matter? I mean, again and again, they keep saying these things. Here's a document, and then he says a different thing. Where's the connection between these eyes, do you think?
Well, I think that's the important part here. There really isn't a connection. They're citing to all sorts of different things. They're making all of these different claims, largely that are unconnected. And I think the real important point here is that the focus of this speech, the focus of these attempts at undermining confidence in our elections, is not about 2020. This is not about looking back at the 2020 election and showing that there was some interference or something going on there. What
Yeah.
this is about is 2026. It's
Right.
about manipulating the public perception in our elections. It's about undermining confidence in our elections and laying the groundwork to try to interfere with the election in 2026. And the reason why I started off by saying that this was a pure attempt of desperation is because Donald Trump has tried everything possible to lay the groundwork to rig the 2026 election. And this is just another part of that process. He's tried to pass the Save America Act, which he referenced last night, failed multiple times. He's tried to engage in this mid-decade gerrymandering scheme, which has largely been a wash for
Yep.
Republicans. He has tried, after the Supreme Court decision in Louisiana versus Calais, which gutted the Voting Rights Act, he's tried to push more gerrymandering and netted just a couple of seats. And so every single attempt, everything that he's done so far has not actually worked out in his favor. And now this is the latest part of that process, the latest attempt to try to rig the election, because he knows that he's losing the public's confidence. He knows that the public is worried about gas prices. They're worried about putting food on the table. They don't want to continue the war in Iran. And now he wants to distract from all of that and try to lay the groundwork to manipulate the election results in 2026.
Yeah, and that's the whole thing. It is the gas. I mean, it's so funny. Jim McGovern, whom I really like Jim, and he was like, so let me get this straight. Like Democrats were in charge. When Trump was in charge, they did manipulate this. When he was in charge, the election was somehow manipulated. It's just, again, it's all gaslighting and more lies and more lies, constantly relitigating the past. Do you also think, for me, there's the narcissist part, right? Like that's the one election he
Totally.
lost. He just can't let it go. I'm still struck, and we showed the clip of him saying, the reason you voted against me is because China fooled you to thinking I was doing a bad job. It's like, dude, people were dying in the streets. I worked in a COVID field hospital.
Right.
Exactly. It's like this memory wash that doesn't exist to set up the future thing. Let's take a brief pause for our sponsor. I want to come back. I want to pull that thread of the Save Act, because that's back in the news again, and we really have to go through that. So I'll just be right back. Hey, look, I have an unhealthy amount of pictures of my cat Shugs. Look, I admit it freely. I mean, look at her. Here she is recharging in the sun, because if she doesn't, her battery dies very quickly and we lose her. So I like to keep taking pictures of her, and that's why we feed her Smalls. Smalls is fresh, human grade cat food that does so much more than just feed your cat. It helps them live a full and frankly healthier, happier life. Now, most cat food out there is made with meat byproducts, cheap fillers, artificial ingredients, basically stuff that is not great for your cat at all. And the Big Pet Food does this because it's cheaper to make. But what they save on cost, you and your cat are paying for with their health. And Smalls is different. Their fresh recipes are made with at least 80% animal protein, and they're gently cooked to retain all their nutrients and flavor. They never add fillers or artificial ingredients. And their food is so healthy that 80% of cat parents who use it say that after feeding Smalls, their cats have better digestion, a softer and shinier coat, and more energy to play. And it's simple. There's a simple reason why. It's actually really good for your cat. So your cat's health and longevity starts with what they eat. So try Smalls. Get 60% off your cat's first order, plus free shipping, free treats for life when you go to smalls.com/Fred. As an On Democracy listener, you get this deal for a limited time. I'd love you to take advantage. So the last time, at 60% off your first order, plus free shipping and free treats for life when you head to smalls.com/Fred. Check it out. Shugs appreciates it. I want to keep taking pictures of. I hope you will too. Thanks. And we're back. So the Save Act. I mean, that's what this is really. I mean, again, the desperation is ramping up. I mean, considering the first thing he mentioned for Lindsey Graham died was that there's going to be, it's the desperation they're throwing at that. I mean, we've talked about it a lot. Obviously, I've thrown up the graphic which you saw earlier about what's in there. I'm being beat up right now on Twitter by all the MAGA chuds because like. Somebody said that you need ID to get into Costco. No, it's a membership card. Oh, you don't understand, but you need ID to get a membership card. I'm like, y'all, it's just constant, stupidity and gaslighting to the nth degree. You guys are bad on the Save Act. I mean, talk about how does the average, when we're fighting this fight, I would love to arm my viewers, but even me. We're talking about it isn't just voter ID, right? It's so beyond just voter ID. Literally, voter ID is like one bullet of 5, right?
Exactly. I mean, we have to remember how all of this started out with the Save Act. The Save Act was never included voter ID to begin with.
Right.
Voter ID was tacked on later. The Save Act in its original form was purely a documentary proof of citizenship bill. And that means that when someone has to register to vote, they have to prove that they are a citizen through presenting certain types of documents like a birth certificate or a passport. And while that might sound like a common sense thing,
Yeah.
we already prohibit non-citizens from voting in our federal elections. And when someone goes to register and vote, I encourage your viewers, if you go and register to vote, if you move or have to update your registration, take a look at the affidavit that you're signing. The affidavit says, I attest under the penalty of perjury that I am a US citizen. And so people, what Donald Trump and all of these Republicans who are promoting the SAVE Act are saying is that people are actually lying and risking going to prison to be able to register to vote. These are non-citizens who are purportedly risking going to prison. These are folks who are the least likely to take risks.
Right. Right.
And so the SAVE Act is not a voter ID bill. The SAVE Act is about making it more difficult for people to register to vote and to stay on the rolls. And this is going to disproportionately impact certain groups of people. It's going to disproportionately impact people in rural communities who have to drive longer distances to get their birth certificates or passports. It's going to disproportionately impact married women who have changed their names since they got married, and therefore their names don't match what's on their birth certificates.
Yep.
And so those are the folks that are really going to be impacted here. It's not going to impact non-citizens who are already not registering to vote. It's going to impact U.S. citizens who are trying in good faith to register and engage in the political process.
Yeah, and that's the deal. I mean, it's a constant battle to try and get this and try and get this. It is a voter suppression act. It is about voter suppression. And that's before we talk about him tacking on the two parts about transgender healthcare, which has nothing to do, which somehow they never mention in their speeches, which is weird. They try to avoid that part, which was what we call here in Missouri ballot candy. We're trying to entice people to support, right? Oh yeah, trying to get I mean, again, it's about hatred. But none of this is coming out of nowhere. I mean, these are the same. You've been tracking this for 2 years, from Heather Honey's 2025 Organize I Call, my friend Mike Flynn's February summit, to the draft, the emergency executive order circulating. I mean, does Thursday's address to you at this point, you look like a step in that plan or disconnected from it? Do you think it's coordinated at this point, or is it really, like I kind of said, am I right when I say they're throwing spaghetti at the wall?
I think it's a combination of both. I mean, I think the coordinated strategy is throwing spaghetti at the wall. And so this is part of like you said, years-long plan. And what we've seen from the beginning of this latest Trump administration is that there is really unprecedented access to the administration and to the highest levels of the administration by conspiracy theorists and people who are promoting false claims about election security and election integrity. And I'm talking about people like Cleta Mitchell, like Heather Honey, who is now a high-level official at the Department of Homeland Security. I'm talking about scores of former Trump attorneys who tried to file lawsuits that were frivolous and tossed out by courts on behalf of Trump to overturn the 2020 election. Now they are high-ranking officials at DHS and DOJ and all of these agencies in the White House. And so what we are seeing now is really a takeover by the federal administration, of the federal administration, by these conspiracy theorists who are now advancing the agendas that they were trying to advance before through networks like the EIN and other conspiracy theory networks. And so this is absolutely part of that plan. And we've seen, the executive orders that have been issued on voting by the Trump administration. Those were informed, if not written by, some of these folks who are advancing these, totally debunked, multiple times debunked lies about the 2020 election. And so, none of this was a surprise last night. I think it is part of the plan to lay the groundwork for further manipulation and a potential national emergency declaration that would give Trump the ability to interfere with election rules, because he's been now completely blocked by courts. The executive orders that he's already issued, for the most part, have been blocked by courts. He hasn't been able to get the SAVE Act through Congress. He hasn't been able to engage in the type of manipulation that he wants to be able to. And so now he's working towards the most extreme option, which is declaring a national emergency based on the lies that he told us last night.
Yeah, and Steve Bannon came right out right away. I was like, "Yeah, there it is. This is powerful." We know we'll see Mike Flynn as always. It is. So, do you think that's next? I mean, as the desperation mounts, and that's what we saw. We saw. I joke a lot. It's like if flops sweat came to life. The desperate, and he knows he's going to lose this election. He's going to lose the House, and he may well lose the Senate too. I mean, as the desperation ramps up, how serious is this threat of a national emergency, and what would that look like? Do you think if it plays out? I'm sure you guys are looking at what this might play out like.
Yeah, I think it's absolutely on the table. It's something that we have to be ready for. And Fair Fight and many other organizations that work in this space are ready for the declaration of a national emergency if that's what happens. And what it actually looks like, it could be a variety of different things. It could be the declaration of a national emergency followed by additional executive orders that are intended to manipulate state level rules on elections to require certain types of proof of citizenship or banning mail-in ballots. I think the things that we have already seen him try to do through executive orders, through the Save Act, I think those are the same types of things that he might do through the declaration of a national emergency. But we have to remember that the basis for any declaration of a national emergency is completely false.
Right.
And we've known that for years. And so I think that's really the important point there that, if a national emergency is declared, then he's going to have a hard time substantiating why a national emergency is actually necessary.
Right, and you need cooperation. He's gonna need the cooperation of the Senate and the House. He's gonna need the cooperation of, frankly, government agencies, including our United States military, which makes me nervous, especially what Pete Hegseth's doing. It doesn't seem. I mean, honestly, for me, the fact that Save Act is failing, the fact that the Senate can't agree to it, and the fact there are enough Republicans resisting it. I can't help but wonder what's going to happen, what the appetite would be for a national emergency, which is far, far beyond this ridiculous act. That appetite might be, and how the fight might play out. I mean, I struggle to even lay out how that fight may go out, how we could stop it. Have you guys considered the gaming options, if you will?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's going to be fought on multiple fronts. I think there is a legal front, so it'll be fought in the
Right.
courts, and there are legal avenues to be able to challenge the declaration of a national emergency. I think importantly, it's also going to be fought on, in the realm of public discourse, and
Right.
in many ways, that's going to be the more important part of the fight because we want to ensure Americans that our elections are secure because they are. They have been determined to be secure many, many times by both major parties, by officials in both major parties. And so I think that's going to be a really important kind of front of the fight is to make sure that people understand that just because the president says something and declares something, that doesn't make it true. And so that'll be an important part. And then I think, we've already seen, like you mentioned, Republicans in Congress be very, very uncomfortable with a lot of these attempts to manipulate elections.
Right.
And not just the Republicans in Congress, but also Republicans in the states and chief election officials, secretaries of state across Republican states have pushed back on Trump's attempts to get voter data, voter file data. We've seen Republican election officials come out against the Save Act and say that this would be not only unnecessary, but impossible to implement before November and would actually cause chaos, which, by the way, is what Trump wants to happen.
Right. I was gonna say, I mean, that's kind of one of the goals, right? I mean, I'm in
Right.
Missouri, brother. We're not even sure what map we're voting on in 2 weeks. Yeah. So, at that, if we may have to replay our primary, I mean, chaos is part of the game, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that has been part of the game this entire administration is flood the zone, create chaos, undermine confidence in the elections because of that chaos, and then fill that void with disinformation and try to use that as a justification for extreme measures like a national emergency or seizing ballots, seizing voting machines, things like that. And so we have to be ready for all of that. We are ready for all of that to happen. Um, but I say all of this not to make folks think that we are actually going to have a chaotic election, because I
Okay.
think if we are ready for these attempts and we use all of the levers that we have, like the courts, like the realm of public opinion, like working with our election administrators and our colleagues across the
Yeah.
states, we can stave off a lot of this stuff from actually happening. And if you go back to the 2020 election, there were dozens of lawsuits filed. There were so many attempts to overturn that election, including on January 6th. And ultimately, our institutions held up, and we were able to successfully have a transfer of power during that election cycle. And so, in this time that Trump is doing everything he can to undermine our institutions, I think we have to have some trust that our institutions will hold up, and I think that they will.
And that was my next piece is I know people back watching this might get despondent. I mean, it's not an unusual thing, the demoralization we're facing. I talk to people every day in my day job about how they feel demoralized. They wonder if we're going to survive all this and all. I mean, what do you tell people when you I'm sure you speak to audiences all the time and people, probably your neighbors even. That's what I thought, when they find out what we do for a living, I go, Fred, what's going I mean, you said a little bit of it, like, hey, look, if we fail by it, who's organizing, who's leading, and where do people look for leadership to follow?
Yeah. I have been doing a lot of work on redistricting over the past several months, especially with this Supreme Court case that I mentioned,
Yeah.
Louisiana versus Calais, that gutted Section 2 of the Voting Rights Act, which, I won't sugarcoat that it is a terrible decision that will have repercussions for our democracy for generations to come. But what really gives me encouragement and gives me hope is what I saw from the response to that decision. And what
Yeah.
I saw was that there were leaders across the country, and in particular in the South, Black leaders in the South, organized, mobilized, responded in full force at state capitals, in the streets, and did everything that they could to fight back against discriminatory redistricting maps. And what the result was, in some states like Louisiana or Alabama, they did pass new maps and eliminated opportunity districts for Black voters. But in other states like Georgia and South Carolina, where the governors called special sessions specifically to target Black districts, voters, everyday people were able to push back and prevent them from actually
Yeah.
passing those districts. And that's in states where Republicans are in control of every branch of government. They are in control of the legislatures. And so that is an example, I think, of the power of the people to really push back against institutions and leaders that are trying to do the wrong thing. And so I've seen that not only in the South, I've seen that across the country. Just think about the response to ICE in Minneapolis. Think about the No Kings protests where millions of people have come out. And so I think the people are mobilized. I think they know what's going on in our country right now. They're fed up with it. And I think if there's an attempt to steal the 2026 elections by Donald Trump, that the people are ready to fight against that.
Yeah, I think that I feel that way too. I think and by the way, what's interesting to me here where I live in Missouri is it is bipartisan backlash. The manipulations, the special session they held, the sitting on our Secretary of State right now, smirking guys sitting on the results of our ballots that we signed, because law doesn't says he doesn't have to. It's just both sides. I talk to people on both sides of the aisle, and they're frustrated that they're just being used. Everybody feels like they're being manipulated by powerful people to maintain their power, and that goes before one of the clips I showed is Trump talking about his buddy getting a private airplane for the first time. He's never even flown in a private jet, but he got a private plane thanks to the big billionaire bill. I mean,
Right.
people know the haves are doing great and the have-nots, and this is another way for the haves to maintain power, isn't it? And it's a
Yeah.
frustrating situation, isn't it? So,
Yeah,
well, I
I mean,
guess
that's exactly what it is. Yeah, it's an attempt by Trump and his cronies to hold on to power at any cost. And what we're seeing with all of these people coming out is that they're not going to have it. They don't want to see that happen. And so I think that's the situation that we're in right now.
it is a desperate attempt to I mean, again, I do go back to that point. You said, well, you would have voted for me if China had manipulated you to think I was bad. Like, no, we lived it, dude. We people and just like now, it's no different. I think that's the tell with Trump. He's telling you what he's hearing. He knows that they're in trouble. He's seen the special elections go against the Republicans. He knows that people are fed up. The affordability crisis is a real live thing. If people cannot afford to make ends meet, he can't resist stepping on himself there because he's never had a problem affording things, right? And so I think they are desperate. I guess for people watching who want to do something now the speech has actually happened, where should their attention go? Where can folks follow your work in Fair Fight? How can they be part of this fight?
Yeah, absolutely. I think there's so many different ways for people to get involved in these elections that are coming up. Number one, I encourage everyone, if you've never done it before, sign up to be a poll worker. We are going to have as many people as possible who care about our elections, care about our democracy, serve in that capacity. And if you've never done it before, it's actually a lot of fun. You learn a lot about how elections work. And most people who I talk to who have served as a poll worker are able to see right through all of the lies that Donald Trump is telling because they actually see how the meat is made, how the sausage is made, and they see that there are so many different levels of safeguards to protect our democracy and elections. And so I encourage everyone sign up to be a poll worker. If you don't have that much time or for some reason can't sign up to be a poll worker, you can always sign up to be a poll monitor. So there are organizations across the country who do nonpartisan election protection. And you can sign up to be a poll monitor for a few hours at a poll, watch what's going on, report issues that voters are experiencing, help voters that might have questions or not have full information at the polls. That is a really, really important role. You can also sign up to be on the hotline. So if voters call in with questions, you can help them get the information they need. And so those are a couple of different ways to participate. And then I would also say, if you have a candidate that you really like and support that's running for office, go and volunteer for them, contribute money to them, participate in the electoral process. It's really important for us all to be engaged. And so really, really would encourage everyone to participate in any way that you can.
It's like I always say, democracy is not a spectator sport. And we've
not.
got to. And Fair Fight's been the fight for a long time. I guess the final thing, where can they find more information about your work specifically and Fair Fight Action, be a part of that fight?
So Fair Fight has a Substack called Rights and Insights. I encourage everyone to sign up, subscribe, and read our Substack. We just posted a really lengthy, detailed post about all of the stuff that was in Trump's speech, all of the attempts by the EIN network and these election deniers to infiltrate the government and try to sow the distrust in our elections. And so I encourage everyone to sign up for Rights and Insights on Substack, and then follow us on all social media. We are Fair Fight Action on all different platforms, and so follow us there. Keep track of what's going on.
I love it, man. I'm glad you guys got hold of me and jumped on here. Is prepping us. It was great being prepped for the speech myself and all the information you guys spread. Honestly, you guys are in the fight, and I really appreciate you more than you can imagine. Having been a former citizen of Georgia, where it all started. Thanks for everything you and Amir, thank you for what you're doing for the fight. We really do appreciate you, man.
Thank you, Fred. Appreciate you.
All right. We'll see you soon. Another great conversation with a smart person on this thing. And look, it was easy to watch that speech and be just dumbfounded by it all, or not watch it, which is what a lot of people chose. I mean, he did spend a good chunk of that speech talking about how the ABC and NBC had their licenses pulled for not running his speech. It's just more like even Fox spent a good portion of the speech saying, well, we can't prove this. We haven't seen the documents because they got sued last time. So again and again, what we see is the spaghetti against the wall technique of trying to delude us that there's a real problem. There isn't. But we have to stay vigilant. We have to not dismiss this. You've got to get in the fight. You've got to participate. And as Amir said, participate in Fair Fight, participate in your local elections, become a poll worker, become a poll watcher, become a poll greeter for your favorite candidate. We could use them here. Whatever you can do to take a step out into maybe out of your comfort zone to be a part of this effort, because without you, it all falls apart. We have to be a part of this. And I always amazed as I go around this area I live in, I talk to people, what disturbs me the most is how many people are still disconnected from it all. Like you people here for the Midas Mighty, you're part of this. You sleep, drink, and eat this stuff. But I tell you, folks, you gotta talk to your neighbors, and it'll be frustrating how many people have no idea what is happening. How many people have no idea they got gerrymandered to a different district, have no idea who the options are, and who they're running for. You've got to be, because there is a shocking amount of Americans who've decided it's all just too stressful. And it's like, I like to joke when people say they don't do politics. I don't do politics for it. I said, well, it's going to do you if you don't participate. So get your folks, not just your people politically minded like you are. And I'm not even talking about MAGA people. I'm just talking, to me, one of the things that worries me the most as we go into 2026 election coming up is the disconnected. The people who have given up even bothering to pay attention. And they're good people. Maybe they're involved in nature stuff like that, but they have no idea what's going in the electoral process and how much it's going to affect them. So I would urge you to talk about, not just, I'm not telling you to go talk to your MAGA cousin. Okay. I'm talking your friend who's down the street, who's having a beer at your house. He's like, nah, I don't care about that. They need to care. They need to care, because our children's futures are in great danger right now. And our own future is in great danger right now. And sitting on the sidelines ain't going to fix any of it. So get those people who kind of checked out to check back in, because that's who we need more than anything as we get close to this election and taking back our country from this madness that it's been the brink of for so long. Again, I am Fred Wellman. This is On Democracy, the FP Wellman, every Friday night right here on the Midas Touch Network. I love having you guys here. Look, you can always keep up with us and what we're doing at fpwellman.substack.com. It's a little bit less, it's a little intermittent right now with all the other stuff I got going on in my life, but you can find about that too. I would love to have you sign up for that. It's totally free, or you can pay to be a subscriber. Either way, we'd love to have you follow us there. In the meantime, stay in the fight, folks. Like I always say, you know what? We're still here and we're not done yet. Thanks.